Okay, it is now 6:30 p.m. and I'd like to, is it actually 6:31 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee meeting to order. While this meeting is being held in person, we are also offering the option for the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of missionks.org. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting. If you are participating through Zoom, please either add your comment in the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you are part of our in-person group tonight, please raise your hand but stay seated and we will call on you to go to the lectern to make your comment. When you make your comment, please speak your name and the city of residence for the record. Also be conscientious of others trying to speak and speak slowly and clearly. This meeting will be recorded and posted on the city's website at missionks.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions or concerns. Ms. Volks, when you are available, please call the roll.
Technical difficulties, please stand by.
All right, Hayden Champosi.
Here.
Vaughn.
Here.
Loudon.
Here.
Ryder.
Here.
Kring.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
Josie.
Here.
Carpenter Davis.
Here.
Our first item of business tonight is public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment now on an item that is not on our agenda tonight? Please note, public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone online who'd like to comment? Looks like no. Okay. Public presentations tonight. We have a public presentation this evening from Johnson County District Attorney Steve Howe. Come on forward.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for an opportunity to come before the city of Mission to talk about a very exciting thing that we are in the planning process for Johnson County. And this initiative is really about supporting victims of violence. And I'm talking about domestic violence, sexual assault, elder abuse, child sexual abuse, all those victims who have been taken advantage of. And we have great services already in Johnson County. We have Safe Home, we have Sunflower House, we have Moxa, really great organizations that work hand in hand with my office to help provide support to victims. But one of the things that we all agree on is the way that we are parceled out throughout the metro and the county, it makes it difficult for victims to get services that they desperately need. And so what the purpose of the Family Safety Center is to have a one-stop shop. So instead of having to go and get a protection order at the courthouse and then having to go to Safe Home and get assistance there, and then to find another place to go to get clothing because you don't have any clothes for you or your kids. And it just goes on. And when you talk to victims, that is the biggest struggle. This is all while trying to maintain their semblance of sanity through the lowest point in their lives, having to a lot of times deal with children and figuring out what to do with them and also keep your job. And so one of the things that we unfortunately have failed at is we make it difficult, even though we have the services throughout the county, we make it difficult for people because they're all at various locations. So a family safety center, the purpose is that one-stop shop. And what I mean by that is you go into the facility, you have somebody from legal aid there to get you a protection order. There's clothing and other essentials for those individuals that don't have a place to stay. There's a daycare location for the children. So the mom and dad can go to work or take care of the legal things that are going on in their lives. The crime lab can come in and take pictures and do other exams, as well as working with Children's Mercy and other hospitals, let them do a total physical exam like on sexual assault cases. So this gives us an opportunity to do all those things in one location. And it's just not me that feels this way, but some of our great partner agencies are actually on our board of directors. So Safe Home and Sunflower House both have members on the board of directors for the Family Safety Center. And they're very strong advocates for this type of concept that we're trying to put together. Other metropolitans across this country have implemented these programs. These programs have been highly successful. And one of the things that I was surprised is at these family safety centers, half of the people who show up have not called the police, have not filed charges. And to me, that's another indication we're missing the opportunity to serve people that are in distress. Because, there's probably the vast majority of us in this room probably know somebody who's either been a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault. And so giving those individuals an opportunity to be successful is so critical. And that's why these centers have been so successful, is because many times they haven't called the police, but they want to get away from their abusers. And so this is an opportunity for them to be able to engage services without having to come to my office. And I would rather them get the services and not file charges if that means they're safe. And so that's a critical thing that I've never heard of, is that half of those family safety centers, half of the people have not had criminal charges filed. And I think each and every one of the cities in our community would receive a benefit from that. I asked Chief Madden, I'm like, remind me how many DV cases you had in your city last year. And he said 95. So just by virtue of that, think about that, 95 that he's aware of times 2. And that's how many people just in domestic violence that could be served in your community here at Mission by instituting a family safety center. So we are in the planning process. So why I'm here, I'm making an ask. And that ask is, other cities have given us a donation, and the purpose of the donation is the Hope Alliance is an institution that helps communities organize a safety center and help put that together. Because a safety center is different in each community, depending on the needs and the dynamics that are going on. And so they're kind of the facilitators, is the way to put it. And so to engage them, we need $80,000. And so I've been going to the various cities throughout this county and asking for their donations. Right now, we're probably at about 2/3 of them have already donated. I've asked that the donations be commensurate with the size of their cities. So like Overland Park and Olathe, my expectation is to have them donate more because there's more people to serve. Your neighbor, Miriam, a month ago, to my surprise, I asked for 5, they gave me 10. So I'm not putting pressure on you, but your neighbors did. And so my ask is for $5,000 for the startup from your city. If you choose to give more, that's great as well. But I think you're going to see the real benefits play out for the citizens of your community once we get this instituted. And what will happen during the facilitation process is they engage various members of the community. It's like, what do we need? What do you see as a key component, and where do we locate it? What agencies will be engaged in the center? And so like, there's going to be someone asked from your city to participate in this, just like all the other cities, in order to have these work groups and have discussions about what we can do and how we can serve our community. I've been doing this for 34 years as a prosecutor, and I've seen a lot. And I know that there's a lot of people in our community that struggle. You see some of that as well, serving in this capacity. This is an opportunity to serve people who are, again, in their worst moments of their lives and provide them the strength and the support so they can, again, be productive members of our community. And that's what these family safety centers do. I would ask that if you are interested in donating, it's a 501(c)(3). It's been a long day, sorry. Organization, and so it's a donation to a charity, non-for-profit. And if you are agreeable to this, I can get the details to the Chief Madden if you're willing to make that donation. I wanted to also put it in perspective here in the Midwest. In Oklahoma City, which has a population of 709,000 people, last year they saw 6,800 clients and provided 40,000 different types of services to those individuals. Tulsa has a population of 411,000. They also saw 6,800 people. So if you think about it, that kind of gives you an idea that the number of people that would be going into those facilities. And again, each facility looks different. It has the same different types of square footage. One of the things that as a member of the board of directors for the Family Safety Center is we want to start small and grow. Because, you can't go for the whole enchilada right out of the chute. You've got to show that it works and be able to show that there's real value in it. I've also been really honest with all the cities, and that is if once we get the initiative started and we start moving forward, the successful safety centers have donations from their different municipalities. And so one of the things I'm trying to be totally upfront with you is at some point in time, we're going to again ask for people to consider making that part of your city budget and a yearly donation to the safety center, again, commensurate with the populations of your various cities. So that is, again, I don't want to sugarcoat this. I want to let you know that we'll be coming back. But I do think there's real value in this, and it's something that I'm excited about, and our partner agencies are just as excited about it. Safe Home and Sunflower House and Moxa love this concept and feel like it could really assist them in being able to provide the services that people desperately need. So I'm going to stop talking. Chief Madden told me that there might be questions. So I'm going to go ahead and fire away. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Looks like we have several. Thank you. I'll just go down the line here. Debbie.
Do we have, geographically, it will be located with the county offices? Is that what the proposal is, or where will it be?
Well, when we talked to the Hope Alliance, one of the things they talked about is where do we put it? Because you want it to be easy to get to, somewhat centrally located, easy access to transit and other abilities for people to get there with ease. So that is part of the planning process. Where do we put it? And what square footage should we start out with? And one of the things I forgot to say is a lot of the police departments would actually have officers in the safety center. So not only would they provide security for the safety center, but they would have the opportunity to interview people and provide assistance to those individuals that want to file a police report. So I forgot to add that component, so I apologize. But yes, that would be part of the planning process.
So transit's part of the potential process, trying to figure out how to get people if it's way out south.
And yes, and the other thing is they told us that there are some safety centers that employ volunteers who have vans that pick people up and take them to the center. So there's some metroplexes where there may not be a lot of transit. So they use those as a way to not be an impediment for someone to get the help that they need. Good question, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I had a couple questions. First, I know you were introduced as District Attorney Steve Howe, but my understanding is this is a nonprofit where you individually are a board member. And so I was just curious what, if any, the county's role is in this project versus this being an independent nonprofit.
Sure. I am a board member as the district attorney. There's nothing that prevents a politician to be
Sure.
on the board or anything like that. But I'm acting in that capacity. As to your question, as to the county, the sheriff's office is also contributing money.
Okay.
And I've also had conversations with Chairman Mike Kelly. And at the point in time where we start to gather the money for the initial seed money, they know that we're going to be making a request to the county commission to also provide some money
Okay.
towards that. And then there's also an anticipation, I've been totally upfront with them about, I'm going to ask that the county provide support on a year-to-year basis.
But it is an independent nonprofit, no plan for this to become like a county program or
No.
anything at this time.
There are some,
Okay.
there's some locations where it's actually part of my office. And I just,
Okay,
and when I heard that only half the people
sure.
brought charges, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't think that would be a good idea, because I don't want people to be worried about coming there.
Yeah.
And, we want this to be a separate organization, individual organization supported by other partner agencies.
And then I had one other question about the funding and the funding model. And thanks for being transparent that you'll be coming back asking for more money. Appreciate hearing that up front. But, other than our own, we have an in-house mission family adoption program. And other than that, we, at least currently, and I think historically, Laura could correct me if I'm wrong, are donating, through UCS and don't sort of cherry pick other
Sure.
nonprofits or respond to kind of individual asks for donations. And so I was just wondering, is your plan to become part of that, or you're going to continue to come with direct asks to cities? Or
I think our plan, and last time we talked as a board, is to just do a direct ask. Now, one of the things I had indicated to Chief Madden is we also have an opportunity to be able to take forfeiture funds, if that's also a possibility. That's permitted. I had some of my lawyers do some research, and it's permissible for us to do it that way. So I wanted to give the cities different opportunities to donate in different ways. And in fact, one city did do it through their forfeiture fund. And then some of them did it directly out of their police department. And then others, the cities just did a direct donation. So there's many different opportunities depending on how you feel most comfortable and based on your current situation as a city.
great, thank you.
Okay, first of all, I love this idea. I work in social services and understand the need for this. So I am excited to have kind of a one-stop shop. I know how hard it is for victims to navigate a system that doesn't value the, confusion of
Yes.
what they're going through and how it all works. So will this just be funded through cities and individual donations, or will there ever be any form of government funding?
That's a really good question. And the models vary greatly. There are some that are substantially paid for through city funds, like in, the Dallas Metroplex. There's a lot, they're very similar in that we have so many different cities, and a lot of different cities pay into it, and that makes up most of their budget or revenue, of money coming in. But there's also opportunities through grants and other foundations that you can apply for. And our goal is, once we get the ball rolling, then we can start going to foundations and making the ask. Because a lot of foundations, they want to see you with some brick and mortar or some plans, formal plans, before they're willing to donate. There's also opportunities through grants to make requests. But I would say the majority of the safety centers across the country, the majority of their support comes from local and state government.
Okay.
And then also individuals one of the things I always thought is we've got a lot of big corporations here, and being able to make ask, once we get the ball rolling, being able to ask of them and see if we could get donations. And the other thing is like, in Safe Home used to do this and they got away with it, got away from it because it just took up so much of their resources. But just having various stores donate clothes that they're just gonna, it's out of the season and they're just sitting there and there's nothing for them to do, whether they could do a write-off to the 501c3, and then we could have clothes for people to wear, kids, and adults. So I think there's real opportunities for private and companies as well as private individuals being able to donate in some way. And my hope is that we have diversity in where our funding comes from. I'm also on Sunflower House's board, and I know how important it is to have diversity in your revenue stream, especially in today's world where the grants are kind of drying up, and the VOCA grants that so many of these organizations rely upon are starting to really cut back. And I know I've made a pitch to our congressional people that we need to start supplying money back to VOCA grants that support victims of violence. For the last 5 or 6 years, that money has continued to go down and Congress hasn't funded it. So we're really close to getting enough votes to have it on the floor. And we're hopeful that by doing that, there's more opportunities for grants down the road for us.
So how do the partnerships with Moxa and Sunflower and Safe House work? Will they have staff working within the building or? Okay. Will people actually be like staying there overnight or?
They have not talked about having a facility that people can stay there. I think there's going to be opportunities maybe. Well, I know with Safe Home, they're always full.
Yep.
Despite their expansion that we put together. So there's maybe other opportunities for us to try to find other beds for people to stay, but the facility would not be a place where people spend overnight or anything like that.
Okay. Okay. So they would just then come into the safety center and then be transported maybe to
Yes.
to a shelter of some sort.
And you talked a little bit about this is while their heads are spinning, they're at their worst point of their lives, is being able to sit down with them and say, okay, here's some resources that are available to you. Let's make some phone calls, having people assist them so they can find a way out and not stay with their abusers.
I just kind of worry that it's going to be a circular thing. I have made phone calls to find beds for victims of domestic violence all day long and not found any. So I think that that's an important issue. Also, homeless shelters. I mean, we have one domestic violence shelter in Johnson County, 0 homeless shelters. So I really think that there's going to have to be a little bit more infrastructure.
Right.
Before you can really reach the goals. I hate to be a Debbie Downer here, but I've made those calls.
Well, and I don't disagree with you because, I mean, let's face it, our county is transitioning. We're no longer a bedroom community. We're the biggest county in the Metroplex. And so with that comes big city problems. And, even though we have so many different cities, you could say we have big city issues that are starting to show up, and we're going to have to take a different approach. And I agree, one of the things that part of the planning process is to discuss about what are the needs out there. Mm-hmm. So I think to your point, that's what they want to hear during the planning process. So we can start developing a plan that meets the needs for the community. And so those are going to be some of those hard discussions that we have. Okay, here's our resources. Where do we spend that? What do we do with that? But getting those partner agencies involved who have lots of connections, our police departments are all on board. I think those are the key components for success for us. And with the cities across this county also being on board, I think, will we have little bumps in the road? Yes. But those growing pains are necessary for us to get to where we need to go. And I'm just excited about that people understand, as you do, that there's a real need for this. to provide those valuable resources to those people.
Well, and even just finding a space that the community will invite you into, I think,
Yes.
as we found with the homeless shelter in Johnson County that never happened. So just plan how you're going to
Right.
bring that about and your communication plan and you know how you're going to handle the not in my backyards.
Right, right. And, even Safe Home, when they created the shelter they have now, the first time they did that, there was a lot of meetings,
Mhm.
a lot of discussions about that. And I think, so that's really going to be one of the key deciding points is where we put it, what kind of building do we need? Do we use an existing building and then supplement down the road? Because I don't think you don't want to create a Taj Mahal right out of the chute. What you want to show is the value of it and that people are using the facility. And then by doing that, you can get the foundations to start giving money. Because there are a number of foundations I'm aware of that would love to give in these types of situations. And hopefully with this success, we can start to engage some of those foundations and get a steady stream of money coming in.
Absolutely. I mean, Kansas City metro area is very generous, and there's lots of different companies that really do want to help support, you know, everyone in the community. So I'm very excited about this. I
Good.
just don't know that cities can afford to foot the whole bill for this.
No, I agree with you there. That's not realistic.
Right.
But I'll write your name down. So when we do the planning committee, I think we already got someone signed up.
I am very interested in what you're
Good,
doing
good.
and see the value. I mean, it's again, you know, working with those sorts of people and having some personal experience in these instances, having someone to be able to tell you, okay, this is the first thing you do, and here's the legal counsel, and here's the shelter, and here's the resources all in one place, you know, does make life so much easier for people who aren't in a space in their mind where they can have logical thoughts because they're overwhelmed with the trauma. So thank you.
Yeah, and really, again, that one-stop shop is to take some of that burden away from them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I'm most excited about, because I see these people each and every day up in my office, and you can just see the glazed look in some of their eyes that everything's just spinning around them.
Yeah.
So we're hopeful that we can ease that burden a little bit.
Great. Thank you.
Did we have other questions? Yep, just keep going. Wanda? Yep.
I have several. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, so you have this building. Let me try to understand. You have the building and that's what you're asking for money for, but you're going to have services. So who's paying those salaries?
And that's a really good question. So the contributions from like the cities and grants and private organizations would help pay for some of the salaried individuals. However, the vast majority of the people working there will already be paid for by their organization. So Safe Home being there, that is already paid for by Safe Home in their budget. Sunflower House, the same thing. The police departments would have people there. Legal aid would also already be there. So those organizations would actually contribute through their own budgets to really provide those resources at that location.
Oh,
There'd be just some administrative staff. I would say a small number, and I think that's part of the discussion in the planning phase is how many employees does this organization actually need, since the vast majority of people that are going to be there are from organizations that are donating those individuals.
So if there's a police person there, does that mean that you take it from our city services and they're in that building all day?
Well, it kind of depends on the police department. I don't anticipate like Chief Madden here having somebody there full time, but he can have a location where he can bring his officer there if someone is making a report from his city. Some of the bigger departments may actually have somebody there full time. I know Overland Park indicated a real desire to maybe put an officer there full time because of the numbers that they are dealing with. So it just kind of depends on each and every departments, but we would have a core group of space for all the police departments to use. And the other benefit of having officers on site is for security reasons. Because I will tell you, there are many people, especially domestic violence victims, where the abuser will try to track them down. And so it's important to have security at those locations, and having the officers on site will be a real benefit in that respect.
So what would be your capacity, what you're looking for right now?
That's part of the planning
You don't know.
phase. Yeah,
Does Kansas City, Missouri have a program like this?
no.
How much do you currently have committed?
Right now, the commitment is about 70, I think we're at 70,000 right now,
And you're looking for 80?
80.
And what's your timeline?
We're hoping to have all money in pocket here in the next 60 days. So that way we can start setting up the Hope Alliance and their calendar, so they can come in, and so we can start engaging people in the community to set their calendars. So my guess is if we hit our mark, which I think we will, here in the next 60 days, is to set something in motion for sometime in the spring for us to start engaging the community and start talking about, what is this going to look like? What do we need for this? Mhm.
Got the last question. Councilmember Vaughn asked most of the questions that I had already. It's okay, you're just down to the one. So Alliance for Hope International, have you spoken with anyone else who has already worked with them and their experience with the support provided to help get this set up? Because it sounds like it is an astronomical undertaking.
Yes, we've had multiple conversations with the Hope Alliance, and we've also had members of our board actually interview other safety centers and get some ideas about what were the traps they ran into, the difficulties and the things that they had to negotiate. And we're going to continue to do that because, to me, it's like they've been through it. So why not mine their history so we don't make the same mistakes they made? So we have started to do that and have done that over the last 3 or 4 months.
One more question that just popped up. One of the, I guess, populations that I know Kansas City metro area struggles with are victims of human trafficking.
Mhm.
Is that on your radar? Because
yes.
that kind of is more special in terms of dealing both with the victims, and a lot of times the goal is to get them out of the community as quickly as possible because they tend to go back.
Right. I've actually, I had, me and one of my lawyers, were involved in the 2017, 18, I think, is when we took on all those massage parlors throughout the metro, or throughout Johnson County. All those women were being trafficked, and they have done that. And most of them have been for decades being taken advantage of. And that is a real struggle, trying to get them the resources, trying to break that stranglehold that's been placed on them. We were lucky in the respect that we were able to actually engage the federal government and some of their services and agencies to actually help us through that process. And I'm always of the belief that if there are agencies, and there are a number of agencies that support victims of trafficking, that we engage them on those case-by-case basis. And if there's a need there, that's one of the purposes of that one-stop shop, is like, okay, let's see what we can do and what help we can get you by making some phone calls. And so I think that's definitely a group that we would be involved in at the safety center.
Thank you.
Wanted to ask my question about police staffing. So if there are no other questions, I'll say thank you for your presentation, for answering our questions.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to give me an opportunity to talk about it. I'm pretty passionate about this. And as I said, I spent a career supporting victims of violence, and no one wants to talk about it, but it's a real need and it has a real impact on our community. And I appreciate you allowing me to come before you and talk about this. And if you have any questions, feel free to talk to Chief Matt and he'd be more than happy to connect you up with me. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Things you have left to go do this.
Olathe and Leewood are the last two. Yep. Let's hope so. But thank you again, folks, for your time. Have a great night.
Thank you. We have no other public presentations, so we'll move into our action items. Our first this evening is the acceptance of the meeting minutes from Robin Folks.
Thank you. Draft minutes of the June 4th Finance and Administration Committee meeting are included for review and acceptance in your packet tonight.
Thank you. Did anyone have any comments regarding the meeting minutes? Otherwise, I'll take a recommendation, please. Consent. Thank you. Our next action item this evening is for the authorization of a contribution of asset forfeiture funds to help with the implementation of a family safety center in Johnson County from Dan Madden.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As District Attorney Howe mentioned, excuse me, planning process for that facility is underway. If I can talk, there we go. And they are looking to engage the Hope Alliance to help them figure that out. We put a number of $3,000 to come out of our Special Law Enforcement Trust Fund that we would, but we would also, we have $43,000 in that fund if you all see fit to go to the ask that DA Howe made this evening. So I think he has a lot more information about that you probably just learned, and I don't have as many answers as he does. So that's my presentation, unless you have any other questions about the administration of that.
Thank you, Chief. I actually have a question. My understanding is the assets in that fund are fairly limited in what they can be allocated towards. Is that
Yes.
fairly accurate?
Yes, and that was in the packet was the memo that one of the assistant district attorneys researched and came to the conclusion that it would be a legitimate ask and use of the funds for that.
Were there any other questions? Yes. ma'am.
Yeah, a question. Well, first a clarification that it's the state funds and not the federal funds that should be used, right? According to the memo on the asset forfeiture funds.
Yeah.
But we have plenty from the state is my.
Yeah, that
understanding.
all,
I was gonna say, did you cut off?
Yes, that was good.
Hang on, maybe we'll get the generator?
So we have to.
There goes.
Or do you want to wait a minute for video and everything?
Yeah. Give it just. Did you get everything back?
It never went.
Okay.
This stuff's gotta kick back on now. That's good.
Like a blue sky day to me.
We had a program.
I know. It's still
this didn't come back on.
Next somebody stopped else.
They're having to reset polls over.
Yeah. Hang on. I don't have audio, oh, there you go.
Massive trees.
Audio's-
Audio's on.
My microphone went turn on.
interruption, but we are back. Or we are, okay, we are back. If you wouldn't mind, actually, Mayor, just repeating your
Oh,
question.
yes. Oh, yeah. So I was asking, so my understanding from Steve Howe's staff memo is that there are state and federal funds for asset forfeiture and that it's cleaner if we use the state funds. But then I also understand we have sufficient state funds. Is that, are the?
Yes,
true?
we don't have any federal funds
Okay.
for forfeiture. So,
Great.
you know, a lot of times that goes with agencies that have task force
Oh, okay.
officers and,
Got it.
or do, you know, gigantic drug cases and
Gotcha.
things like that. So,
Okay.
all of our forfeiture funds in general come from, drug tax stamp.
Okay. Got it. And then, yeah, I just had a couple like thoughts, not necessarily questions for you, Chief, but I can hold that until.
Oh, I just wondered, what do we normally do with forfeiture money?
Essentially, we can use it for new things. We can't generally use it to supplant the budget. So what, I mean, I know, trying to think we used something for it most recently. Yeah, the motorcycle tablet for motorcycle to get them on with the e-ticketing. That was something new for us. So that would qualify. We've used it to put a exhaust system in our property room so the entire station doesn't smell. And just general things like that that we use that kind of come up from time to time that we kind of find a need to use that serves a law enforcement purpose.
Okay, and you don't foresee a need for this money for something else coming up soonish?
Nothing substantial.
Okay. And would we want to do more than 3 if there's 4?
Like, should we hit this?
Well,
I'm curious about your opinion.
oh yeah, I just had a couple of comments about sort of process, but if other people have questions for Chief, then I'll.
I don't really have a question, just a comment. And my comment is that I really think, to me, it just sounds not very well gelled yet. I mean, it sounds like a great idea, but I don't see a whole lot of substance being espoused. And so that is my concern about this plan. And so I guess my feeling is that when do we have to come up with the money? And can we wait until they have a better plan? That would be mine.
So from my understanding is what the ask is currently is so they can start to get the substance. They have to engage that consultant essentially to help figure out the needs and all the administrative and technical stuff that they need to be able to move that forward. And until they have, that's what this ask is for, to engage that consultant.
So they're asking, I'm not sure then. So they're asking for $80,000 to pay somebody to tell us what we need?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's what they're asking for. So I think you heard Mr. Howe reference site selection. So I'm confident that a large piece of that will be evaluating various sites throughout the county. I heard him mention square footage. So probably looking at estimated needs, how that square footage might best be allocated to serve the needs. So it's sort of like a space needs analysis that we might do on steroids a little bit, because you're going to be then, I don't know, I think it's unclear in what I've read about whether this planning process also sets them up for future recommended funding streams. Or, I mean, it could be staffing, it could be all variety of things, but yes, they don't have a plan other than a vision at this point that this is a service that they would like to provide in Johnson County.
Yeah, and I share a little bit of similar concerns to Wanda. I understand from DA Howe's presentation that they're in the early stages and the planning phase, but other than there's DA Steve Howe's name attached to this, what do we actually know about the Family Safety Center or about Hope Alliance. And that's why I was asking the questions about in the future, will they go through UCS? Because we've used UCS in the past to vet our donations, because they have the staff and the capacity to determine, is this an organization that has their act together? Does the mission align with the needs we see in the county? And so, I thought it felt a little bit like a bait and switch that his letter didn't mention that their primary funding stream is going to be government funding, and that he's going to be coming back with an unknown ask, every year. When this is an independent, organization, it's not actually affiliated with a county program. And so, I think I guess I would say I'm not opposed to the $3,000 that's in the action item, or even necessarily his $5,000 ask here tonight, but I have concerns about, sort of setting precedent of going outside of our regular donation system, because I think there are a lot of other worthy organizations, in the metro, and we can't fund them all. And so we have sort of our process, and this is coming outside of our process. But I understand launching a new organization is sort of a unique moment in time. So that's why I would be comfortable with an exception, for that and with the dedicated forfeiture fund stream. But I have concerns about the plans to come back and ask for money every year.
Yeah, I actually share really those similar concerns. My issue is not so much with the one-time $3,000 request, as that's in a fund that you do a lot with anyway, and it's there. It is the ongoing payment, and actually I appreciate one of you asking about the staffing. That is not no cost to have one of our officers be there, even if it's temporarily. That's lack of their ability to serve the community here. And there's a cost associated with that. So I would like, I guess, yes, more details, and I know they can't give those until they have the consultant funded, but that's where my head is with that for at the moment. Cheryl.
The only comment I'd make is, I think, Leo, you brought it up, not in my backyard. And that's something we have to deal with as a county. And until then, some of these plans are going to be, bought and paid for, but they sit on the shelf. And I'm not supportive of a plan that's going to die on the shelf. I'm supportive of these issues in our county, no doubt. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse. We are becoming a very large metropolitan. I mean, it's incredible to think we go out to 175th Street, not here, Mission, but how far, and some of these problems and what's happening. And I've seen the trafficking of women, because I was right out on 435 as an employee, and it's horrible. And so it does exist, but a plan that's going to be shelved by somebody saying, not in my backyard, I want to have the county give us some guidance on that.
Yeah, I mean, one thought could be, if we are sort of looking into what the organization is and everything on our own, I don't know if the chair of the committee would potentially entertain deferring this to August, so we had a little more time to dig in. That's just one idea, but.
Yeah, essentially everything that's already been said, but I think summing it up, it doesn't seem like we have a ton of confidence up here in what exactly the money is going to, or what we should be doing, or how much we should be doing. And I don't know that I'm feeling that from staff either yet. I don't know how much we can get from additional time, but it would be nice to just vote on this with a clearer head of some sort. I'll say, on the positive side of things, I took about 15 minutes to just kind of research Hope Alliance, just to get comfortable for my own, purposes here tonight. And it sounds like if you're going to do something like this, they're pretty well the gold standard. That's who you want doing it, from what I can tell. And yeah, I see the ask as, this is something that really, it doesn't exist, hasn't really been conceptualized, and is extremely early in the planning stages. And I think DA Howe has identified some funding sources that just happen to be sort of cities on goodwill, trying to invest in figuring out if this is going to take, and if this is going to turn into something. So to that end, I think if we're willing to support $3,000 or $5,000 worth of, let's see what this organization that appears to be, to me, upstanding and credible in the field, can do in terms of helping the county plan for this kind of thing. I think that's a reasonable ask. I agree that we need to follow it up with we expect things to be laced up a little bit more going forward. I too would prefer to see this done through UCS or intergovernmental, transfer of some kind, so.
I think one reason I would be interested in potentially deferring this is it gives them an opportunity to see what Olathe and Leewood can kick in, as they have greater opportunity, I think, to contribute. Debbie.
The confusing part to me was it wasn't until 3/4 of the way through that it said that it really isn't a county program because he's representing the county as a district attorney. So that was a little confusing. And have they applied, have they gotten their 501c3? I didn't know, I know he said it's going to be a have they applied?
Yeah. It looks like they formed in 2019. They've been around since 2019, but there's not a lot of information out there on what they do other than asking for donations. So I don't know. There's other literature or resources that are available. But yes, they do have their 501c3 status, the Johnson County Family Safety Center Foundation,
Okay. All right. Well,
which is the board I believe he's referring to, overseeing the decision-making process.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I kind of think back to, obviously, we're comparing apples and oranges, but the homeless shelter. And, when we were kind of discussing that, because I know that was very much more established and like there was a plan in place. But it's a similar situation where the county was coming to us. I know it's not anyways. But we had kind of talked then about, this is a huge problem. We knew that bringing in a homeless shelter wasn't going to completely solve it, but it would at least take a bite out of the apple. And I guess I'm hesitant to not, because I'm like, to not give, their ask, because it's taking a bite out of that apple to hopefully fix this or like make an impact in some way. And I'm hoping that if they get this money over the next year or so, we could have a better plan in place and then make a better decision on how we might want to approach that. But I guess because the forfeiture funds aren't easily used, I'm in favor of using it towards this. So, yes.
Okay, so a few things. First of all, one of the things that we were upset about when the county came to us to ask for money for the homeless shelter is that they came so late. They're coming early. I feel like I sit here and I see these issues and I can't do anything about them. This is big. I've worked with women. I've worked personally through some of these situations. It is so confusing when something happens and you need to go ask for help and there's 15 different places to go and nobody really tells you the route you need to take to bring it all together. So I think that this is somebody in a position who has seen so much of this and worked with it for years, saying, hey, here's an idea. It's working in other cities. Or we could just sit here and do nothing.
Yeah.
So for me, let's get the ball rolling. Let's see where this leads. I mean, they've got someone who's going to be making the plan for them that do this all the time. Not-for-profit world is a lot of bumbling around and trying to figure things out. So it is great when you've got someone that can come in and say, here's what has worked in other cities. Let's look at your particular community and see where the needs are right here. I mean, I don't think any of us really understand the human trafficking that goes on in this city. We are on I-35 and I-70, and it is huge. It is way bigger. Chief probably has an idea, but it's way bigger than our citizens really understand. Domestic violence is huge, and it so goes unreported because people are scared. They're scared because they're a victim. They're scared of their abuser. They're scared of what's going to happen to their kids. They're scared of what's going to happen to their life. And so they just allow it to go on. So I think that this is something that, yes, it's some money that's in a pot that's not being used. Let's see where this leads. Now, I too am not thrilled about necessarily them coming back and asking for money time and time again, but maybe once it gets some feet going, it will find a revenue stream, either federally, state, or county. But we have skin in the game, you guys. There are women and children and men all over Mission that have been victims of crimes. So if we don't put some skin in the game, then we're letting those people down.
Go to Wanda.
I guess that my perspective on the whole thing is that this truly is an emotional issue and nobody wants it. Nobody wants not to do anything. But I'm not sure that a physical place where people are placed is going to help. And we spend 80 whatever amount of money is going to help this. It seems to me that if you want help in one place, go put it on a website where they can get it. That's where they don't even have to travel there. They don't even have to be seen. I mean, it seems like there's alternate things. I am concerned about throwing $3,000 into a nebulous well, because there's a difference between the emotional aspect and the emotional ask and what is really going to be done with that. Well, if you want to do something, give it to the safe home or something. But that's just my perspective. And that's all I have to say. It's a big issue. I'm not sure that putting physical people in a place is going to help any. I think there's other things that could be looked at.
I think the idea is to bring all of the pieces together. Because yes, if you are a victim, you go to the police. If you are a victim, you could go to safe house. But having a place where it's all tied together and you're not having to navigate all of these different entities when you don't really have the capacity to do that, is a bold and idea that I think the time has come, because as I've said before many times, there are a lot of great organizations in the Kansas City metro area, a lot of people who want to help. But oftentimes they're disjointed and not pulled together in a cohesive way. And that's, I think, an important aspect of helping people that have been victims, so that they don't have to go to, 3 or 4 different places to get help. I think it's a good idea, but I do get what you're saying, for sure.
Can't you stay in your house?
Well, because sometimes they're not in their house. If you're the victim of domestic violence, you take what you have and you leave. And that might not be your laptop. It might not even be your cell phone. So, I mean, you can call 211 and get resources on the phone, but that doesn't really help you make a plan. That just tells you, well, you could go here, you could go there, you could go here. But if you go to one place and they've got someone that can help you make the police report, and that can help you talk to someone from legal aid, that can help you talk to maybe someone who can help you deal with the trauma that you're experiencing right away, someone that can watch your kids as you're doing all of this, I think it would be helpful for victims.
Okay, I got a few others. I'll just do in the order I saw them. So Mary, Ben, Mayor, Giuseppe.
Well, and Leah, I know you're the expert, so correct me if I'm wrong, but we do kind of see this being a successful avenue with Sunflower House, which is kind of a cohesive place for kids to go to and don't have to also, be interviewed by the police. It's kind of a one-stop shop specifically for kids. So we see it work in that aspect. I don't see why it wouldn't also work for domestic violence, victims or human trafficking victims, et cetera, et cetera. So, and this is especially, like you said, like those people they've got to get physically out of that situation and go somewhere. And I know that there are resources online for sure, but those might be checked or looked at by the abuser. And yeah, so I just know that we've had Sunflower House come and talk to us about it and all the success that they've seen. And I know that this could also be an extension to get people to Sunflower House as well too. But yeah, just side note.
Ben.
Yeah, I think it's clear that the need is real. I think it's a fit for restricted funds that we don't necessarily have a great idea what to do with, and are meant to be directed towards this kind of thing, nominally at least. What I'm seeing here is I think an idea and a purpose that is probably legitimately pretty difficult to get together and to actually plan and ideate and develop around. And I think, again, lacking anybody else standing up to do it, this is the organization, Alliance for Hope, that as far as I can tell, you want doing this. So I think the ask is reasonable. I think I'm not opposed to moving this to August, but I'm ready to go ahead with the item tonight if you all are. I think the bigger, I really don't think it's that big of an ask, really, and it's an important thing to do. I think the bigger responsibility for us is to be diligent about how we're going to follow up and treat the next steps. I'm okay with this being, let's throw some money in the pot to see what the options even are, because I'm not sure anybody in the county knows, and this is probably the best step forward that's anywhere close to being on the table, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that comment at the planning stages. You know, I think we don't know a lot, but I think the buy-in from Safe Home and Sunflower House is meaningful to me. I used to be on the board of Safe Home, and so those are, I think, and we went and toured Sunflower House, and they've come to our council meetings before, and so I think the buy-in of those organizations is meaningful at the planning stage. You know, I just want to be clear that I have concerns about their plans for the ongoing funding model. And so if we want to talk about that a little more, that was why I was just suggesting we could defer. But if people, you know, want to take this on non-consent or even consent to this meeting, you know, I'm not opposed to this singular ask, I guess.
Well, and I also think it wouldn't be out of line if you want to move forward with this funding request to, when we contribute that, to put in writing those concerns about your concerns about the ongoing operational funding aspects, just so you're on the record right out of the gate of, we heard you, thank you for, you know, being transparent tonight, but these are the things that we'll really want to see and understand in the future.
Yeah, Giuseppe.
Yeah, that's where I'm.
That was a similar thought that I had. Like, there's nothing that making this guess of like $3,000 to see if it's feasible, that doesn't mean we are committed to the rest of any money going forward. And I do wonder if we can just say, like, anything else is contingent on us believing that this is actually feasible based on what you bring to us after that. I don't think there's any, I think a $3,000 bet to see if they can kind of make it work is no harm at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think setting that expectation up front makes a ton of sense. That we would anticipate that part of the consultant's recommendation would include funding. It makes sense, yeah. If there are no other comments or questions on this, I would take
One more.
one more.
You know, I think if this is going to work, everybody has to play a role, because they can set this place up, but if our police station isn't referring people there, or if Hope House isn't referring people there, or if people don't know that that's where they're supposed to go, then there's not really a point. So I think if you know, we put some money in, it goes through the planning stages, it starts to function, knowing how many of our residents are served by that would be really helpful in making a decision as to how we fund it going forward. Because if you know, they put it in Olathe and only Olathe people are using it because it's close, there's really, you know, we're not getting the value for our money. So yeah, I completely agree that, you know, we need to be careful going forward, but I'm willing to see how far they get, because I think it's a good idea.
Okay, I'll take a recommendation on this one.
Yeah.
Regular it is.
And I wonder if we might have just information on if the full ask is feasible at the regular meeting. The $5,000. I think enough of us are questioning that. Do we want to continue discussing 3 versus 5? 3? Okay.
I mean, if he's going to Olathe and
And
Leewood, he
Leewood.
said, and
Yeah.
he's at
There, that's
70,
Yeah,
he could do it, we could do it with 3.
yep, we'll be fine. Okay. I am just now realizing I never asked if there was any public comment on this particular item, but I don't believe there is. Okay. Our next two action items this evening are related to resolutions of intent to levy property taxes exceeding the revenue neutral rate for the 2026 budgets of the City of Mission and Rock Creek Drainage District Number 2 from Laura Smith.
Actually, that is poor agenda management on my part. So if it would please the chair and the committee, I would recommend that we let the chief do his crossing guard item because the revenue neutral really goes with the discussion item on the budget. So
It-
that is agreeable. I would suggest we do that.
Pleases me greatly. Our final action, well, not our final. The next action item this evening is for consideration of a contract renewal for crossing guard services for the 2025-2026 school year, also from Chief Dan Madden.
A little bit less of an emotional presentation for this one. So we have contracted with All City Management Services for nearly a decade to provide our crossing guards at Rushton and Highlands Elementary. You know, we saw a huge increase a few years ago in that contract. With that increase, we've seen a real tremendous increase in their abilities. I don't think we've had very few issues with them since that increase. So we would recommend that we enter a contract with All City Management Services for the 2025-2026 school year for an estimated cost of $31,514.40. And that's what this asks for, but just for everyone's awareness, we also have a crossing guard that we share with Prairie Village at the intersection of 63rd and Bro that they bill us directly, and that anticipated cost is going to be approximately $6,010.20, which brings our total obligations for crossing guards at $37,524.60 for the next school year.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from the public or the committee on this? We'll do the reverse order this time and come back this way, which means it's Leah again.
Okay. So it says that the hourly rate of $43.77, that's not just for one crossing guard, that's like for,
Each location, yeah. So that's for each location, 2 hours or 4 hours a day, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. So.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, my question was, they do seem to keep raising rates year over year. So I was just curious when we last took this out to bid, or if there were any plans to do that like in the next year, next cycle.
We can try. I don't know
Are
if
they
there's
the only
another
thing
show in town.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. I don't believe there are any public comments or questions. Oh, Debbie, sorry.
Survey to see if we can get adult volunteers to do some of these things.
Well, in the past, prior to engaging the all city management, we had city employee, part-time employees that we hired to do crossing guards, and that proved to be a little bit of a challenge to find people and to keep those people year after year, especially when, with the lag and a summer paycheck and things like that. But they've managed to figure out the right combination of things to keep it rolling. So that's where when we transitioned, it was kind of for a reason, because of the administrative nightmare that it was to try to make sure those things were staffed all the time.
Okay. I think we should move forward on this, but I think next year we need to kind of reevaluate exactly for the money. That's almost $44 an hour. That's a lot of money to stand there. But I mean, kids' safety comes first, but.
Well, that's the contract cost, not what they're actually paying the guards, right? So.
Oh, what's the administrative costs or overhead?
They don't provide that for us.
I would say you'd probably be hard pressed to do it any cheaper yourself and keep people staffed all the time reliably. That's probably the premium you pay to just, they're there. That's the end of it.
Well, the challenge also that we had, and I think Chief alluded to, is that when they were our employees, we didn't have a big bench. And then if somebody is sick or takes a vacation, it's one of our officers out there, which is a lot more expensive than $44 an hour.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll take a recommendation, please. Consent agenda. Thank you. Okay, that brings us back up to the two action items related to resolutions of intent to levy property taxes exceeding the revenue neutral rate for the 2026 budgets of the City of Mission and Rock Creek Drainage District number 2. Thank you.
So while Justin is passing those out, the blessing and the curse of getting on a plane and flying to Atlanta for your granddaughter's first birthday is you bring something home with you apparently. So I apologize for the mask, but nobody wants to have this cold, I don't think, especially me, but anyway. Here we are this evening. So the action item on the agenda, as Chairman Schmidt said, was the resolution of intent, which is now part of the prescribed process as we adopt our annual budget. And so we talked about this in our last budget work session. The county provides a revenue neutral rate to us by mid-June of each year, which tells us based on our underlying assessed evaluation how what the mill levy should be to generate exactly the same amount of property tax revenue for the next year's budget as we collected in this year's budget. So that's where the revenue neutral. And we talked about this being essentially that you aren't allowed to take advantage of growth in CPI or new construction or any of those things. The expectation being then that you're paying for services that you're delivering at the previous year's prices, which doesn't really work in most people's own personal households or businesses, and certainly is not something that works very well for a local government. So we're required, every taxing entity, if you intend to exceed revenue neutral, and I'll share some more in the PowerPoint presentation we go through later, but if you intend to exceed revenue neutral, you have to pass this resolution signaling your intent, and that has to be done by July 20th of each year and shared with the county clerk. The county will then prepare a sample tax bill or illustrative tax bill that goes out to everybody sometime between July 20th and August 20th that will show you what all of the various taxing jurisdictions that are represented on your tax bill are planning or intending for the upcoming budget year. And so that's why we're here on this time frame this evening. So at our meeting next week, those resolutions will appear on the agenda for your consideration. So I want to talk a little bit about, so in the past, we've had actually 3 resolutions of intent to exceed revenue neutral, because not only are you the governing body for the City of Mission's budget, but you are also the governing board or body for the 2 drainage districts, which we have established, Rock Creek Drainage District number 1 and number 2. Completely separate budgeting processes, but it all is combined into our annual budget process. So you only have 2 resolutions that will be in front of you next week, one for the City of Mission budget and one for Rock Creek Drainage District number 2. Which is, so Rock Creek Drainage District number 1, which is exclusively the gateway site, actually decreased in valuation. So in order to maintain a revenue neutral rate for the 2026 budget, we would have to increase the mill levy over what it was the previous year. So there's a lot of sort of trail through charter ordinances over the history of the establishment of the drainage districts. And we've really tried to maintain a focus on keeping that mill levy no more than 10.5 mills. And so that's currently what the mill levy is for Rock Creek Drainage District number 1. So it's our recommendation. If you feel differently, we can prepare another resolution for next week, but our recommendation would be to just move forward with the regular budget process, leave that 10.5 mills in place for Rock Creek Drainage District number 1. Rock Creek Drainage District number 2 did see an increase in valuation. So Rock Creek Drainage District number 2 picks up on the west side of Roland Drive and essentially follows the creek channel all the way down to Lamar. So these drainage districts were established, I don't know, close to 20 years ago now, when we were really facing the revisions to the FEMA floodplain maps and looking at ways to fund ongoing stormwater construction, reconstruction, and maintenance. So we do actually have the flexibility through a series of charter ordinances that were adopted to use drainage district revenues collected within either drainage district, anywhere within the watershed that is located in the city. So we have historically just used the revenues that are currently available through those two drainage districts to pay stormwater debt service. Rock Creek Drainage District number 2 did see an increase in valuation. So their current mill levy for Rock Creek Drainage District number 2 is 7.745. The revenue neutral rate would be 6.710. And so we are recommending that you consider leaving it the same, so no increase in that mill rate. But in order to keep the same mill rate that we have in this year's budget, we would need to signal our intent to exceed revenue neutral. That how long it takes everything. That generator. It's been a while for the audio. How about we do, how do you feel about getting department updates done while we're waiting for staff to come back on? Sure. Pen, you wanna go? Yeah.
It's the microphone, you don't have to worry about it.
Dan.
Yeah, just talk, yeah.
Dan. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Dan.
Just wanted to remind you all that we have the Mission Summer Family Picnic this Saturday, exciting time of year. It starts at 6 p.m., should go to roughly 10 o'clock. We'll have the laser light show, free hot dogs, vegetables, chips, drinks. We have some Taste of Aloha, there's another sweet kind of offering. And obviously Rotary Club sponsoring the beer tent. We'll have bands, Stillwalker, and another circus performer. So trying to round out the entertainment this year. It's pretty exciting. And second announcement is we're hosting a tree drive again, second year in a row. We'll plan on giving or selling 50 trees again this year in preparation for Mission's 75th anniversary, where we anticipate uptaking that to 75. A lot of positive interest so far this year. We have not gotten the tree species as of yet, but Bridging the Gap is on board and will help us with the distribution and educating the public here. So I think
You may have said this, where's the family picnic located? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, let's let everybody go. We're all just jumbled up tonight, aren't we? Right.
Is the light on the mic?
Nope, no, it is.
And actually, if I can jump in real quick, are we back online? Okay, just apologies again for anyone who's watching for the interruption. We've moved on to department updates.
I just wanted to give an update on the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. We had our first pop-up event a couple weeks ago at the Mission Market, which before the torrential downpour and thunder and lightning, we made contact with probably, I'd say 40 to 50 groups of people passing through, handed out our card with the QR code to take the survey and use the pinpoint map. As of last week, our consultant counted at least, I think, 39 surveys were completed and over 50 pins on the map. So if you go on the map, you can see there's quite a few of them. You see 8 or 10 at one location here, over the city. So people are getting involved as we receive concerns through, the phone or the internet. A lot of them might be in some of those same locations, so we're pointing our citizens in that direction. Burns and McDonald will be at the summer family picnic this Saturday. Unfortunately, won't be able to be there. I have another commitment, but I know that they will do a great job engaging with the community and getting more of the information out there so we can receive feedback from our community. That's all I have. I'm going to let Brent give some construction updates.
Thank you very much. So on the street projects this year, at 61st Street between Broadmoor and Barkley, all the curbs in, stormwater's in, base asphalt's down, so that road's passable for now. Reed's is in the same phase really as 61st Street off Johnson Drive between Johnson Drive and 58th. They're finishing up the concrete pours this week, and then we'll get that road back open. Base asphalt's down. 63rd Street, our cars project between Knoll and Row. We got all the surface on yesterday, so if you get a chance to drive it, it's smooth and nice again. So that's probably the nicest road we got in town now. 62nd and Glenwood over here on this side of town, we're gonna start pavement removals on Monday, since there's asphalt down all the other streets. Beverly and Melhaven, all the stormwater's installed. That will be the next street they move to for removals, and we're probably looking at the first week of August for that. And then final restoration for all the projects will probably be early September through early October to get all the sod and everything graded out and put back. The box culverts, the first half's built. Monday, they'll start building the second half. So everything's on schedule and moving along. So it's been a busy year, and we're getting ready for all our next projects like Johnson Drive next year and Rock Creek Channel. So you'll probably be seeing some of that stuff here soon. Happy to answer any questions about any of the projects.
Good job.
Yeah.
Moving
along.
You have a question, Wanda?
There's, is there a water main break on 51st? I mean, I heard banging and there's cones and a steel plate. Would that be Water One taking care of that?
Probably so.
Okay.
They've had like 7 breaks around town. They've just been pulling permits every morning because emergency repairs. So I'd have to kind of look through the records, but if there's a steel plate, it's probably Water One.
I had a comment and a question. So first off, on Beverly, sometimes they are blocking the street without putting this road closed signs up. So like this morning I went to turn and then they had a giant truck just down the middle of the street and no person in it. And you couldn't actually go down the street, on the side street there, at the start of the construction. And then I was also curious today, 67th was marked closed going east, like right near Mohawk Park. And I didn't know, it just said road closed ahead and you couldn't go east on 67th. I didn't know if you knew what that was.
I don't know what
I
that was.
believe that I can tell you because I happened to drive down that over lunchtime. It was a Water One, so they must have had a water main break on that stretch, but they had quite a bit of equipment out there.
And our inspectors have been bouncing around, so I'll get with them tomorrow on the Beverly stuff just to make sure we got them watching that traffic control and the correct signage is up. So I'm not out there. I mean, we got a lot going on, so, but I will make sure it gets addressed.
Anyone else? No? Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Well, Stephanie mentioned the market. We had quite an exciting time a couple of weeks ago, and a much less exciting time, but more fun, less water and rain and thunder and lightning. Last week, and now we have this coming week, which is our foam party. So if you weren't there last year, one of our barbecue vendors, Kix Barbecue, celebrates her birthday at the market every year with a foam party from 7 to 8. So bring your water shoes and your towel. It was really fun last year. This year it should be fun again, and it's supposed to be really hot. So plus the misting tent will help keep you cool, hopefully. We have lots of great dinner options this week, including Tight Work. I'll have a pop-up. We'll have some good locally made Italian ice. So join us on Thursday from 4:30 to 8 at the market site. Thanks.
Thank you.
Let's have a quick little note. You may have all received a strange email recently from the city of Mission, the logo on top, and then it says multi-factor authentication. we are actually updating our multi-factor authentication. So the one that we've been using that originally came with Microsoft, we're moving over to a different application through Cisco Duo. And the county's the ones instituting that. They're doing it for all their employees and all the agencies that they support on the network countywide. So it is legit. And if you haven't already done so, just go in there, kind of follow the directions. It's painless. It takes about 2 seconds. And we'd ask you to do it sooner than later because the time may come when you want to get into your email and the system wants to authenticate you. And it's done it to me a few times already, so. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to one of us.
Not a question, just I've done it and it takes less than 5 minutes. Super easy. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So.
Chief, did you have anything? Want to talk just a little bit about National Night Out? Oh, good for the mayor.
While we do, or?
No, while we're waiting.
Okay, I'm going to send an email out to you all individually, but just wanted to remind you that August 5th will be our second National Night Out that we're going to have here at Anderson Park. And do some things in conjunction with Parks and Recreation. We're going to have, the inflatables, and rumor has it they might get me in a dunk tank to raise money for Sunflower House. So I'll see about that. I might have to pull rank. But so
Then I might have to pull rank on him.
oh, that's dirty. So we are planning on having, last year I think we ended up running out of hot dogs at like 400 and some odd, so we had to run to Hy-Vee real quick. But so we're planning on an even bigger and better turnout this year, and I'd love to have you all there.
Thank you. Oh, Debbie. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question, Dan, while you're there?
Yeah.
How are we doing on the traffic situation, Swig? We've had several people calling that they can't get by, that there's, the turn into it goes all the way out through Markway, and people are trying to go this way and this way, and it's really causing some congestion. Do we have any way of addressing that?
So when the first few days they were open, we worked up there. They paid officers to work their off duty to kind of manage the traffic, and since then they have managed their traffic on their own in the same way that we would have. So we haven't put any more resources to it because there's no real alternatives to it, and just hopes that it will die down eventually. They have other locations not too far away that will be coming online sooner, and that will help alleviate some of that as well. It's just, we're seeing it at random times, and it's for the most part managing itself the best it can without, us, closing down roads and right. Yeah.
Okay. See if I can knock the power out another time. Okay, so kind of been through the drainage district. Then you'll have a resolution of intent regarding the mill levy for the city's budget. And really the focus of that is the general fund. You probably noted that in your packet, we did not put a recommended mill rate in there yet. We wanted to be able to continue and have discussion tonight leading up to that meeting next week, where we will need to plug that number in. But if you'll go to the first slide, please, Justin. So tonight I just kind of wanted we're going to recap some of the things that we talked about at our June 25th budget work session as it relates specifically to the general fund, talking a little bit about future priorities and needs in a little bit more detail than what we have up to this point. What is an appropriate mill levy for 2026 and beyond? Other options to balance the budget, and then kind of questions and discussion. So next slide, please. This looks similar to just kind of a general fund overview. And again, all of our property tax revenues are currently deposited in the general fund. And so that's why the emphasis again and our conversation tonight will really stem around that general fund discussion. So that's where we cover all of our operating departments and services, very limited capital expenditures. It's the largest single budget that we have in all of our 19 plus funds. It's where we maintain our fund balance at 25% fund balance of annual revenues is our goal. We build it conservatively, and we've historically done that. But this year, we're building it even more conservatively than we have because of some of the big swings and unanticipated, unfortunately, negatives to the budget, not positives. And we continue to monitor that through our final budget adoption and really throughout the year. And it typically has just that 1 year focus, again, unlike our capital improvement program, which has a 5-year horizon. And then just a reminder, as we talked about in our last work session, when we look at true revenues to expenditures in the general fund from an operating standpoint, we have a balanced budget. Our revenues exceed our expenditures. And it is the transfers that we're making out that add to those expenses that are causing us to dip into those reserves or those excess fund reserves. So just a reminder, we talked about since 2016, we've transferred $10.2 million in property tax revenues to the CIP fund for our street program. And our transfers over that same period of time to the solid waste fund totaled about $755,000. So this is my perfect storm conversation from the last work session. And I just wanted to recap. I mean, we have been talking about the structural imbalances that have resulted from good things from on our end, accelerated progress on the street program, outdoor park improvements, improving employee recruitment and retention, vehicle equipment and replacement, technology and software upgrades, and maintaining our 25% fund balance, all to meet really at the end of the day, the priorities and goals of our residents and businesses. So all of those things we've been doing before we have really started to plan for future needs, such as a new city hall, police facility, continued work on our residential streets and stormwater, ongoing improvements and upgrades in our outdoor parks, implementation of recommendations from various studies like the Rock Creek Corridor, Safe Streets for All, the Stormwater Master Plan. We have, primarily on the capital side, successfully leveraged more than $11 million in other people's money through grants and loans to help stretch our own resources, but that is challenging in the general fund. Much more opportunity on capital projects. Personnel and other budget savings, strong revenue performance in several categories, CARES and ARPA funds have helped to sort of delay the immediacy of the rebalancing, but that's kind of where we find ourselves in really 25, but 26 and beyond. I think really at the end of the day, we feel like we know what we need and what our residents want. So the question we really have to answer is, how do we want to get there and at what speed? So next slide, please. This again is a repeat slide, just knowing that there are multiple ways to balance a budget. So you can do a variety of things. And the things that have been added in red are things that we have done or looked at or have already been incorporated generally in some fashion in the budget, the draft budget for 2026. So the departments collectively have offered back over $200,000 from their line item budgets. And we have delayed purchases and projects, at least at this point. For example, we talked about the street sweeper, kind of our biggest piece of equipment, and some of our technology infrastructure needs. We haven't really identified anything in terms of privatizing or outsourcing services as we've looked at that for the 2026 budget, but that's something we will continue to do. We haven't recommended discontinuing any services or programs. I'm not sure where we would start, but that's certainly something we can have more conversations around. And then holding positions vacant. We always budget for being fully staffed, and we make those adjustments at mid-year. But budgeting a couple of things I think make us a little bit unique. Really only in the police department and the Public Works Department, do we have multiple people in the same positions? So every other time we have a position vacancy, it's one person doing that job. So when that position remains vacant for an extended period of time, it's a tremendous, it adds to the workload of the rest of our staff. So it does typically take us anywhere from, in a good process, probably 90 days, more like 120 days plus to go through that process. So whenever we have a position vacancy, we do tend to have some of that natural sort of shrinkage or attrition. But it also, because we've budgeted, for example, in our personnel expenses for about a 10% increase in health insurance, and that's a gamble. We won't know that number definitively until October. And then we'll have a very limited window within which to adjust. But we have adjusted for mid-year, and I would imagine that there will be personnel savings based on what we're showing in the draft budget, but we just don't know what those are today. So they're on the high end there from a conservative standpoint. So all of those things in terms of reducing expenses, looking to minimize that, those are the things that we've looked at to date. On the revenue enhancement side, as I mentioned, grants, other people's money is something we're always looking for, but very limited availability for general fund operations. Increase in fees and charges. We've recently increased the membership fees at the Howe Community Center. We're looking at other more citywide fee schedule updates, including right-of-way management, building permitting, plan review, all of those things probably coming forward to you in the first quarter of 2026. So we haven't reflected any of those increases in the 2026 revenues. We have the opportunity to consider an increase in taxes, and that could be sales tax or property tax. And then we hope each year that revenues outperform the budget estimates that we've had, but we've dialed several of those back significantly in the last couple of years. So just kind of a different snapshot from what we looked at the last work session. General fund expenses by category in the 2026 draft budget at this point. Personnel is currently 68% of total expenses. Your target range is typically somewhere in the 60 to 65% range, so we're still a little bit high on the personnel side. But again, that budget reflects full staffing, and that plus the increase in for the anticipated health and welfare benefits represents about an 8.5% increase over our 2025 estimated expenditures. One of the other things that is driving personnel expenses is increases in hourly rates that we've provided to particularly part-time staff at the community center and the MFAC, and because we continue to see competition from private sector really across all of our departments. I can tell you firsthand from experience that there are times we have to walk away from potentially the most qualified candidate for a job because of the salary requirements that we're facing. And it can be very frustrating from our perspective because we very clearly communicate what the salary ranges are when we post a job. And there are an extraordinary number of people who come in and, want to negotiate. And so where we have the ability and can do that, we try to accommodate that, but, at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a pop, sometimes that's not something that we can sustain. So contractual services, as I mentioned, the departments have already given back over $200,000. Our line item budgets have historically been pretty lean. The increase from 2025 estimated to the 2026 budget is less than half, just right about 0.5% overall. Commodities are up by about 17.9 or 18% overall, which is in dollars about $99,000, mostly reflected by the fact that we do budget for fuel and salt fully, and we typically, unless we have a really horrible winter season, are able to achieve some savings in the salt and fuel budgets across the departments. The other thing in commodities is there is about a $16,000 expense to replace Broadmoor fence which is the city's responsibility. Many years ago, the city took on the responsibility of maintaining and replacing the fence through that section. Capital, the only capital expense in the 2026 budget right now is the transfer of the police lease payment to the equipment reserve fund. And the only debt service is for the facility conservation improvements that we did back in 2021. And that's a debt service of about $250,000 a year through 2026. So all of that debt service is currently being paid from the general fund. The majority of those improvements were made at the community center. There's an option, although again, all of the funding streams are sort of squeezing down and being pinched in places. But that's certainly, some of that debt service could be paid through Parks and Recreation sales tax. And then the transfers, which we've talked about, we've reduced the transfers in 2025 estimated and 2026 budget by $500,000 in each year in the transfer to streets. And we'll have some more sort of robust, I think, conversation about that as we get a little deeper into this presentation. Next slide. And please, I know you will, but please stop me at any point along the way with questions or comments. Supplemental requests, oh, yes. Yes.
Didn't want to forget. So when was the last time that we did increase fees for like permitting and the other things you mentioned?
I don't know.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
So it's probably due?
It's due.
Yeah, it's due.
Okay, thank you.
Supplemental requests, and I wanted to include this here because we really, in most instances, treat our supplemental requests like the true wish list, right? And the wish list for anybody and everybody, whether it's at home or your work or here, they're always more than we could afford in any fiscal year. So we know that. And we evaluate those and eventually fund those based on the department's needs, the council and community priorities, our policy goals and objectives, and what resources are available. This year, we're going into the budget with really none of the supplemental requests that were submitted by the department being funded, with the exception of $100,000 to continue the work of the zoning code update. That's something we signed a contract for. Phase 1 was $100,000. Phase 2, we've got $100,000 in the budget. It may be more than that. We won't have a clear picture of that until we come back with the audit after Phase 1, correct? So that's kind of where we stand from a supplemental request standpoint. I did want to just sort of recap and introduce a couple of new thoughts or ideas in the general fund revenues. So we talked in the last presentation a lot about the 5 largest revenue streams that make up our general fund revenues, sales and use taxes being the largest of those. We're budgeting those sales tax relatively flat. Like I mentioned in the last work session, most of our other neighboring cities are seeing similar trends. We have been impacted by large use tax refunds in the last several years. So we're being extra conservative in looking at our growth. We do have, if at some point the council wanted to consider an additional sales tax, we do have about a 0.25% authority that is remaining. A 0.25 sales tax is going to generate about $795,000. An 1/8 cent sales tax, which is also, is also an option, would generate about $395,000, just for sort of context. When we think about sales taxes, we think about the pull factor, or how many people are coming into our community and spending sales tax dollars versus how many people are we sending out of our community. And we tend to, because of Hy-Vee and Target and some other businesses, draw people into the community. And then several of you had asked me about the ability to sort of calculate the future sales tax impact for particularly the multifamily developments that we've considered. And I think I mentioned the last time, in a TIF project, we don't do a lot of that analysis. We've done some of that on the tax abatement projects, that a cost benefit analysis is a required step. any tax abatement approval. But when I went back and looked at the tax abatement or the cost benefit analysis that was done for the Mill House project, they were estimating somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000 a year in additional sales tax being generated by, and they were estimating about 435 new residents. So kind of extrapolate that to the block project, which is 300 plus units. So you're probably talking somewhere between, maybe 500. You could kind of see that grow. So it's not huge leaps and bounds, but we can kind of, as we consider projects moving forward, I think we are anticipating that there will be additional sales tax generated by some of the investments that we've made in density in the community. Community center revenues have steadily improved since 2002. The feasibility study set a cost recovery goal of 70% plus. Projected estimated ending 2025 at 61.3%. Right now where we're sitting at projected 2026, we've got some work to do, but it's a slight decrease. And that's really being driven by personnel costs more than anything. So we'll continue to look at that. We did increase membership fees and reopen the facility on Sunday with enhanced programming. And we obviously need to continue to look for savings on that side to move towards the cost recovery goals.
Laura, I know everyone loves the second entrance at the community center, but can you remind me the operational costs on running that second entrance or pin, if you remember roughly what that is?
10-ish
I thought it was higher.
a year. We can kind of refine that number, but yes, the design of that community center does us no favors. Okay, next slide, please. Franchise fees, those are the 5% of gross receipts for utilities that are impacted by weather and rate increases. Additional density, so additional utility revenues are something that are also sort of estimated through these various cost benefit analysis studies. So when you have a larger apartment complex coming online, you're using more utilities, they're generating more sales tax and more franchise fees, potentially, again, in little bits and pieces, but every dollar adds up. And then fines and forfeitures, that's the result of traffic enforcement and code enforcement. We've seen really peaks and valleys in that. I can tell you that since we've started our budget conversations for this year, we've seen already an uptick in citations. And we anticipate that that will continue and trying to find that right balance of what doesn't put us on the map as having a reputation for being too fine happy. And then property tax revenues.
Laura, I have a question on that.
Yes.
Just real quick. Are we mostly staffed with the police?
On paper, we have 2 people in field training and 2 people in the academy, and we're still short 1, so we're technically down 5. But when you're in field training, that also means the field training officer is not doing those tasks as they're training you to a certain extent. I mean, they do some because it's part of training, but.
Gotcha.
When you look at the number of fines being given, do you look at holistically, do we not have enough police to go after more people? Or are we just not getting as many people speeding and DUIs and things like that?
I think it's a combination of different things. I mean, sometimes when you're down, a third of your patrol division, it impacts everything. I mean, it's not just the lack of people, but then it's what it does to morale when you can't take a vacation day or you can't take a day off because you have to minimum. So there's a lot of factors that play into it, but and I mean, they're out there, and it also the change in police work in general, the amount of time that it takes to do everything, and the the pressures that are put on police officers to make sure that everything is absolutely perfect when we're sending a case up to Mr. Howe's office or whatnot, to make sure that those things, evidence-wise, report-wise, and then all the administrative tasks and training that we're required to go to as well.
One of the other things we're diving into, I think, in a little bit more detail is you can issue the citation, but if you have someone who doesn't show up to court, you are chasing that maybe forever and ever and ever in terms of, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but we have a fairly significant percent of people that don't, are no-shows
Yeah.
at court dates.
Nearly a 50% fail to appear rate.
Well, what could we do different?
Well, you issue a warrant and then you hope that you are able to pick them up on a warrant, but
And maybe it's just me, but for the platform to look holistically at where we are community-wide and the issue we have right now on lower revenues coming in for the 2026 budget, I would like to see the onus put on people who disobey the law and not the general population. Increase DUIs, because that's safety issues. Increase the traffic, because we don't want people hit going down Johnson Drive. I would like to see the onus put on the unlawful people versus my citizens. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And, as far as DUI goes, those have dropped dramatically with the advent of Uber and Lyft and those kind of rideshare programs. So, some societal issues cause a reduction in some things as well. So there's a lot of factors that play into it.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I just did want to add, I mean, I think some of that is consistent with what we continue to hear from residents in terms of a desire for increased traffic enforcement. But I think on the other side, I think we're not going to solve a nearly $1 million budget gap with even fines that should be at a level that is appropriate, if we're talking about pre-COVID levels or levels that are in line with community goals relating to policing. I think it would help, but you're also not going to solve that whole gap. But yeah.
I don't know if somebody else had a hand up. On this slide, we're really, this is one you've seen before. This is just sort of where we are, property tax revenues. At this point in time, we've seen about a 4% change overall in projected assessed valuation. The chart here really just helps, I think, visually illustrate that although the intent of the council had been to maintain a mill levy in the range of 18 mills since about 2019, that didn't happen for a variety of reasons over several years. So sort of leakage or slippage a little bit of the potential revenue there. In the 2026 budget, a 1 mill is expected to generate about $232,000. The council did approve a little more than a 2.1 mill increase in the 2024 budget, and that has helped. It's helped us maintain the contribution to streets and a variety of other things. I think as we look ahead, we're certainly still not immune to ongoing future dark store appeals or challenges or refunds. And so again, that's where typically your larger box retail stores will appeal their valuations. And they've had some success with that. And I think we're not typically privy to who all has appealed their taxes in our community. But I think that's something we still need to pay attention to and be sensitive toward, because I think that there's some it was interesting to listen to Councilmember Chosy talk at the work session about thinking about ourselves and who we are as a community, and what we're doing and what economies of scale we might be able to realize or not realize based on that size, rather than just doing a strict across the board, here's where we stand from a mill levy kind of comparison standpoint. But I think that because we have a Target and we have a Hy-Vee and we have a CVS, we have some of these stores that are historically appealing their valuations and winning those appeals pretty significantly, that creates a lot of uncertainty for us potentially in that underlying budget. So I think we at least have to be aware of that fact as we think about property tax revenues. Next slide, please.
Laura, can I
Yes.
raise one point on that? I do wonder if we could get with our legislative consultant about if there could be any legislative fixes, to make that process more transparent. I know we've had a really hard time with the Board of Tax Appeals, like not giving us information, or state agencies not giving us information to better understand that. And also the whole question of for-profit utilities being exempted from these things, I assume that's hurting other cities as well, and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if you're a for-profit utility that you would be exempt in this manner.
Well, and and that's something we haven't talked about it that much through our budget process so far this year, but we're a little bit unique as well. I think the number hovers typically somewhere around 18% of the value in our community is exempt properties. So all the churches, all the schools, county buildings, city buildings, AT&T buildings, Skill Path seminar buildings because they're affiliated with Graceland University. And so that can be a pretty big chunk when the pie itself is really not all that, all that big to begin with. So thank you, Mayor. That's a good point, but we will note and see if there are things we can do. General fund reserves, I'm not going to go down you've heard me talk about the things on the left-hand side, what they're intended to do. The mill levy increase for the 2024 budget started to address some of the structural imbalance between general fund revenues and expenses. But we still need to address the future to really ensure quality service delivery, infrastructure investment, and the needs that we've identified. Right now, where we sit today, and that's the one-page general fund summary, although it's going to show a positive number, when we looked at the numbers a couple of weeks ago, we were at a deficit fund balance position for both 2025 revised and 2026 draft budget. The deficit is addressed in the 2025 revised budget by reducing the reserve requirement from 25% this year to 23%. And that gives us some more flexibility. So we're not coming forward and saying, oh gosh, we have, I think, what's the number at the bottom, $62,000 or something like that, or 30 some, here's what we want to spend it on. But I think that's a way to, as we've worked through the budget as a staff, rather than focus attention on trying to bring this current year and address that, I think our attention really needs to be focused on 2026 and beyond. And I think there have been some things that have happened, and I expect there will be some more things that happen before we get to final budget adoption in September. We know that we've received the plan review fee from Millhouse, which was not factored into these budget numbers, and we had pulled that back out of the 2025 estimated. So that's close to $90,000. That's not reflected here either, which I hope that's a positive sign. I don't believe they've made their payment to start construction on waterline relocation, but we're kind of monitoring that. But if the project moves forward, I think I mentioned before, there's $137,000 in 2026 in building permit fees that is also not reflected in the budget. So we wanted to be able to really build 2025 estimated and 2026 draft so that any of the positive things that happen as we move through the next 12 to 18 months will only help the bottom line, in addition to whatever other decisions the council wants to advance.
Laura, do we know what those numbers would be for block if that project were to get moving? I mean, I understand not putting it in the budget, but do we know roughly?
We could estimate, but I think part of that is if we look at increases in plan review and building permitting fees, we can tell you what they would be today.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, you'd probably be in total somewhere between maybe 300,000.
And we've heard nothing from them
We
in
have
a
not
while?
yet. I have
Okay.
not, but I haven't followed up with them.
Okay, that might be a good touch point.
In a while. And I think we mentioned, I mean, and part of this is, I think we've made some accommodations in those negotiations with the upfront cash payments, and we've deferred those to IRB bond origination fees to provide some flexibility in upfront cash flow for developers, both on block and then with the revision to Millhouse recently. But that's $1 million at the end of the day, if those projects move forward, that we would have, that could help on a variety of fronts, in addition to whatever just our regular bond origination fee. I think the budget accounts for a $60,000 bond origination fee on the Mission 77 project, which is we're set to issue those IRBs by June of 2026. So that has been factored because that project is up, out of the ground, moving forward. So what needs do we have? And I want to distinguish here, I think, needs and have a little bit of conversation in the next 3 to 5 years. And the circles kept multiplying as I was creating this slide. So I apologize that it's a little bit tiny to read, but I think at the top is all of our desire to maintain high quality core service delivery to our residents. I think we have a need and an obligation to continue to be responsive to community priorities. Many of those have been identified through previous Direction Finder surveys. We are due to do another Direction Finder survey this year. We do need to make sure that we're able to maintain the recommended reserves at that 25% level or goal. We know we have significant and ongoing infrastructure maintenance needs, both on the street side and the stormwater side. You may recall, I think when we went for renewal, or at some point there was a number of about $42 million of street needs that had been identified. And we are chipping away at that, but slowly with the number of full depth reconstructions. One of the things that we've talked about internally is there was a plan to do an updated PCI inventory in 2026. Been talking with Stephanie and Brent about moving that into 2025 so that we can have that resource available in this year to really start looking at 26 and beyond in the capital improvement program and how and where we might be able to make some adjustments or stretch our dollars. I'll come back to the police department and city hall facility, but outdoor park improvements, we've made that commitment with the renewal. When we went out for renewal of the Parks and Recreation sales tax, we've made significant improvements. Every park, with the exception of Streamway, has had something that has been updated: tennis courts and the pool at Anderson, the Broadmoor walking trail, Mohawk, which gets lots and lots of attention, which is just fabulous to see, and then Waterworks Park. We've been discussing bringing back a work session probably later this fall to kind of start and re-engage in a conversation around conceptual plans. What was in a 2015 master plan? What was in our conceptual studies? Do we think there's additional needs or interest in other things in the parks, particularly Anderson, Broadmoor, and Streamway, so that we can continue to sort of build out those plans and show that and demonstrate that forward progress. Ongoing recruitment and retention challenges, vehicles, equipment, and technology. I think the street sweeper, as we've talked about, is really the biggest, sort of most critical piece. We would typically do a lease purchase on that. So that's something that we can look at. We haven't included that anywhere in the budget. The Public Works Department, really everybody, police department, within a fleet of any size, community development, everybody's looking at extending the life through maintenance. And even we have a 10-year equipment replacement schedule, but if it doesn't need to be replaced at 10 years, we will stretch it beyond that.
I can't remember now what the price tag was on the street sweeper, but I do wonder if that might be one where potentially a neighboring city would want to contract services. I know we looked at that with leaf pickup for Roland Park and they didn't have the capacity, but that might be something where like Merriam or OP or Roland Park has capacity on.
We can look at that again. I will tell you, I'm always surprised the amount of hours that we are out on that street sweeper doing a variety of different things, but certainly something that we can continue to look at. Right now we've got 4 years worth of lease or debt service payments for the police frontline vehicle replacement that we just did. but we really need to be able to be setting aside more and contributing more each year to the Equipment Reserve and Replacement Fund. The goal when we created that was to level out peaks and valleys. We're still on that roller coaster a little bit. Complete the zoning code update we touched on, and then well, vehicle and equipment reserves as well as just a technology. So really the question is, how do we stay positioned to kind of build on the successes that we've had? So I wanted to go into a little bit more depth about police station and city hall facility needs. We've kind of talked around the edges of that a couple of times this year. Some of our neighboring communities and are in some interesting conversations around their own public facilities. And I think you all know, but I wanted to just share some black and white or color photographs of kind of the situation that we're dealing with in this building. We are certainly not thinking about anything extravagant, but we really do not have a building or facility that we're above capacity. We have no place for people. That first picture on the top left is, we've got an employee whose desk is in a hallway with all of the office supplies because there's no place else to put them. And storage, we're all just sort of on top of each other. The yellow lockers and the shower curtain on the side. It's hard to get, it's so small, it's hard to get a really good photograph of the women's locker room. But how many female officers? 3. The picture with the generator, that lovely green thing in the picture on the far right is the generator, if I'm not mistaken. That picture was taken today. There's water on the floor. Now, we do have some minor roof repairs scheduled for next week. That next picture kind of going around like a clock is property and evidence room. You can kind of see, although we get exceptional ratings on our audits when they come through and look at the property and evidence room, it's a challenge for our clerk to keep that organized. So I think that as we look at that, and certainly I know we talked a little bit last time, we've had some space needs analyses that have said $19-20 million. That's not, I don't think that's feasible for our community. We've had conversations with some other architects, and we really need, the next step in this process would be to hire someone to do site selection and actually design a building that we can construct. And they've told us, at least this was about a year old now, they think they can meet the needs that we have for somewhere closer to $9 or $10 million. That's still a tremendous amount of money. And I don't want to discount that at all, but that's what it will just take from a square footage standpoint and to meet the building codes that are required, particularly for a public safety facility. And that should position us. This building is also, I did not put on here, but it's also, there are parts of it that are not ADA compliant, despite the fact that there might be signs on doors that might suggest otherwise. But there's no elevator, or if you want to go from upstairs to downstairs to the police department, you've got to be able to navigate stairs. So just a variety of factors.
Laura, if we were
Yeah.
talking about the sales tax capacity potentially, whether this year or next year, sometime in the near future, do we have an estimate of what at current rates annual debt service on that 9 to 10 million
So
building would be?
if we look at the issue that we just did in
Yeah.
May, it was about that same range.
That's
And
what
I
I
think
think,
total debt
yeah.
service is $650.
A year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
a little tricky. I meant to look at
So you
that.
could potentially pay for it with a 1/4 cent sales tax.
You could potentially pay for it with a 1/4 cent sales
Okay.
tax. We know that regardless of the cost of a new facility, we're going to have to bond for that. The other thing that you can do with mill levies, and I know Olathe is considering this year, they're not increasing their mill, but they're reallocating mills between the general fund and debt service fund. So you can actually allocate and dedicate mills to debt service. We had, when the city purchased Mohawk Park, they actually dedicated and levied 1 mil to make the debt service payment for the purchase of that former school and park facility. So that's something we've done. We haven't done it for quite some time, but we have the ability to do that.
In that scenario, when that debt is paid, does that mill just fall off?
You still have well, who knows at whatever point that would happen, what our discretion would be, but in theory, you would have the ability to reallocate that or roll it back or do something different with it. So, part of that question is, I think that helps to a certain extent, potentially with transparency as we look at communicating either the sales tax. And so, even if I know we're all very, 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 very sensitive to the sales tax rate, and we're high with our dedicated street and dedicated parks and recreation sales tax. But you could look at a public safety special purpose sales tax. You could look at it general, but I would think if there's an appetite to look at a sales tax, it would be better dedicated to public safety functions. Again, yeah, I'm sorry.
Point, I think it's 10. If it went over 10, you had to go to ballot. What's the threshold for the sales tax increase of when you have to go to a ballot?
Well, you have to put every sales tax increase on the ballot. And a special sales tax, a general sales tax doesn't have a prescribed sunset. A dedicated sales tax, you can only authorize and you have to renew every 10 years. So if you did it for a special purpose, you would look at a renewal. But that's something that if you wanted to tie that, for example, to a debt service payment, you would be able to structure debt kind of around that. And I think we touched briefly in the last work session on the fact that we can no longer do mail ballot elections for sales taxes, so it would have to go on a regular ballot, which is actually saves us some money. We don't pay close to $20,000 for that.
As long as the county gets friendlier about scheduling.
Yes. It's not easy at this point. So next slide, please. This is a little bit, I added a couple things here. This was in the last presentation that we saw, but just kind of looking at what's the impact of a potential mill levy increase. And before we get into the actual numbers, I wanted to, from my perspective, from a staff perspective, why should we even seriously consider a mill levy increase? I think one of the biggest reasons, from my perspective, is the potential threat or the ongoing threat to our home rule authority for you all to be able to set that and to be able to respond and ask and know and understand the needs of our community and respond in a way that meets those needs. I think the desire to continue to aggressively pursue community priorities, whether that's streets, parks, public safety, and we have some large needs in the near future that would require bonding, as I just mentioned, and we'll need a dedicated debt repayment source.
Or can I make one comment on those threats? And I mean, I'm sure we'll hear ahead of session from our lobbyists, but perhaps too late to really think about it in connection with the budget cycle. I think we should also remember that we will have a governor's race coming up and a lot of folks trying to posture for that governor's race, potentially on both sides of the aisle in ways that might make the environment to pass something bad for us on property tax even more likely in Topeka this next year.
And then what other options? So mill levy increases, absolutely. That's kind of started with that slide. We're trying to turn all the knobs and levers that we can. But what other options should we be considering? And I think that it's going to be really important for us, not tonight. And again, it is impacted by a decision on a mill levy because we've been transferring such a significant portion of property tax out of the general fund for streets, but a review and a revamp of our annual street program. I think there are some efficiencies that could be found in a variety of ways, and we may, again, just have to slow down. Particularly, we talked in the last work session, we may not be able to tackle a CARS project every year, even though that is, we're leveraging other dollars. Sales tax increase, we've talked about, particularly for public safety. Program and services cuts. I mean, if there are things that from your perspective, you think that we could cut. We're all ears. We haven't come up with a lot of great suggestions on that front. And then fee increases, which we've kind of touched on. And again, we'll continue to manage expenses, reduce expenses where we can.
Laura,
Mhm.
have we looked at what other cities are charging for those fees? And have we
That will be
compared?
part of that whole process, is we will do a survey. I know we've been responding this summer to a couple of other cities' requests, and excuse me, we always ask that they provide us with that study, but we'll do some additional legwork with that as well.
I just think the harder we can push on that, and if we could look for a January 1 effective date, that would be super. I know there's a lot of competing priorities, but I feel like that's past due.
So just to kind of illustrate here, and I'll go to the chart or the table in the bottom left-hand corner. I didn't include this the last time, but if we were to maintain or go with a revenue neutral rate, which wouldn't require us to pass this resolution. And that revenue neutral rate is 17.805 mils. We would generate no additional dollars in terms of property tax over what we're doing currently. If we were to stay with the current mill rate of 18.507 mils, so no mill increase from where we are currently, that generates about $162,000 in additional over what we are collecting this year in property tax receipts. And then again, you can go in any and every variation. I picked easy ones so we could kind of ballpark in between, but a 2.5 mil increase would generate about 742,000. 3 mils, 857, 3.5, close to 975. I put 4 and 5 in there, recognizing that those are probably more for just to illustrate those dollars, but you can kind of see the impact there. The table in the upper right, again, is kind of where we fall currently with 24 assessed valuation. I believe that the only city in Johnson County who is potentially considering a mill levy increase for the 2026 budget is Westwood. They've asked their city administrator to look at somewhere between a 1.5 to 3 mil increase specifically for capital improvements. There's not anybody that's going to revenue neutral. Everybody is at least maintaining their current mill levy. And you have Prairie Village, Lenexa, and Roland Park who are doing small rollbacks, like somewhere between half a mil to 1/4 of a mil or 3/10 of a mil, I think in Roland Park's case. They always
Prairie Village, Roland Park, and which?
Lenexa.
Lenexa, okay.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, Olathe is looking to maintain that same mill rate, but kind of balancing. So if you look at, if you can kind of see, I should have given you another column to show you where you'd be with some of these other mill levy scenarios. So again, but I think that really speaks to, again, this going back to who we are, what's unique about us as a community and how we deliver services and what services are priorities to our resident and the history of how we found ourselves in this position, right? It didn't happen overnight. And, I think we've learned some valuable lessons, but we're catching up, particularly in infrastructure needs for 20 plus years of deferred maintenance and incredibly low. I mean, Councilmember Crane can probably still recite the mill levy.
I started at
5.1, yes, 5.12. Exactly. And so that was kind of a badge of honor, but now we're paying for some of those
You're
kinds of.
paving 5 mil streets, yeah.
Anyway, any comments, discussions around this before we kind of move on. I know it's a lot of information and it's just, Yeah.
Yeah, Leah.
I have a comment. I mean, I really think that, you know, we are a diverse city in terms of income and houses and that sort of thing, but a lot of it is a working class neighborhood, you know, and I think we really need to look for ways to increase revenue outside of working class people. So whether that's sales tax, which yes, does affect us somewhat, but it also brings in money from people outside of the city. Fees, I think is an interesting way to go about it. It again affects residents somewhat, but also developers, it seems more so. So if they want to come and play, they got to pay a little bit more than what they have in the past.
well, you're paying to use the service. If you want to build a project or, do something, you're paying, it's a user fee essentially is what that becomes.
And then I think also just focusing on seeing if we can get more businesses to come to Mission to create those sales tax and then alcohol tax and all of that sort of thing, because it benefits the residents to have more variety of businesses to choose from and brings people from outside of Mission.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, because we have some newer council members, that back when we had the conversation about the last mill levy increase, I mean, I think a lot of this was already on the table. And like Laura mentioned, it was sort of what was the appetite at the time, knowing that it wasn't going to solve for decades of deferred maintenance and sort of passing the buck, down the line that we're faced with today. But I think a big part of our discussion then, to sort of Leah's point, was, can you raise the mill levy and then look at targeted relief programs? We did some expansion on our property tax rebate program and really look at, the relief programs for those in our community who this might, be a heavy impact for, rather than saying across the board, we're not going to raise the mill levy and provide the services that everyone in our community, including those residents, want and need with their streets and everything else.
So, and I skipped over one slide, which we'll come back to, but we did want to share sort of, we have expanded it. So we added, it used to be 100% of franchise fees, 100% of city property taxes, and then a 50% rebate of solid waste. We added stormwater utility fees to that this last year, which is, as you know, because we have had such significant stormwater needs, our stormwater utility fee on a single family residence is higher than many of our other surrounding neighbors. So that's about $336 a year in addition to the property tax. So we added that to provide some additional relief. We increased the income eligibility threshold from 50% to 65% of the area median income, or AMI. And so in 2023, we had the old system in place. We served 19 households. The average rebate was about $632. 2024, we served 32. The average amount of the average rebate went up. 2025 year to date, we've served 29. We do not turn anybody away. So if we exceed what we've budgeted, we will pay those. But you can kind of see we've been trending still right about the $25,000 a year.
But even adding in the stormwater utility fee rebate alone pays for both the mill levy increase that we did for 2024 and, everything honestly on your chart, right?
Yeah.
So even just adding that to the program, if you're thinking about what we're doing in terms of targeted relief versus hold flat and not being able to pay for the services we hear people want to need.
And you could adjust the percent. You could look at 100% of solid waste.
And we increased the eligibility as well.
We went from 50% of AMI to 65% of AMI. So,
I
So-
note there, sorry, I note there that, we don't turn anybody away even if it exceeds the annual budget. Have we exceeded the annual budget for this, or do we have any left typically?
well, you can see last year our budget was $25,000 and we spent $24,928.
Am I just?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I skipped ahead 2 slides.
Oh, okay, I was
For,
gonna.
uh, Mayor jumped the slide on me.
Yeah, we're $162 over budget for this year to date,
Got
it
it.
looks like. So we
Yeah.
probably will exceed by a couple
total budget. for-
Thousand.
Yeah, we probably will. You know, we have our other grant programs. We have the neighborhood grant, we have the stormwater BMP grant, we have the Mission Possible grant, we have a business improvement grant, which we've not been able to give away to our businesses. And so within that pot of money, we've not even had, you know, despite some of the increased promotion and things that we do. So there are other things that could be made available to help sort of lessen the impact of some of these things for some folks. But that's, yeah, so there are, I think, options there.
And how are we promoting this information to the community so that they're aware?
I stood up here tonight and said, we expanded our promotion and our reach, and we really looked at trying to reach more people. But I can provide that information to you. I don't remember it off the top of my head tonight. But I think we didn't see as much interest as we thought we would, even with that expanded program. And we have some pretty regulars in that program. Nilo will tell you, he knows most of them by
Broader reach of social media we reach out to some charitable organizations, Meals for Wheels.
Yeah, I know my friend who works at the county is
Not sure.
familiar with it, with our programs and.
Yeah.
Still possible.
Yes.
Good.
It's interesting what population at large looks at on the tax bill. Because the year we did the transportation utility fee, AKA the driveway tax, that would have cost an individual resident $72 a year. I can count on 1 year's time, the phone calls I did. But the stormwater utility fee that year went up 217%,
Yep.
not one call.
Not one call.
It's just interesting when people view it, how is this affecting me, that I was shocked on the stormwater. I mean, that really.
Well, and I have always scratched my head because like the transportation utility fee or not, the process that we used, we had probably between 50 and 75 residents, which is unheard of in a budget conversation at the community center saying, break up into small groups, create your pieces of your pie to generate X amount of revenue for streets. How would you do it? Property tax, sales tax, special assessment, all of those things. Driveway. It pains me to say driveway tax, but transportation utility fee. And so that was really resident driven. And I don't know whether it was just the PR. I don't know what happened with that because honestly,
Well, you had a group leading that effort with an agenda
Yeah.
that wasn't necessarily accurate information. that they
Correct.
portrayed, even on the David Letterman show. it was
Yep.
something-
Oh
This
my
is
God,
true.
we made the David Letterman?
we made the David Letterman show. Yep.
Oh my.
Yep. Okay, let's go back one slide because I know it's getting late. And again, this is kind of just a repeat of a slide that we looked at in the last work session. Saying, and these are charts and graphs from the Direction Finder survey in 2021. So they haven't been updated for 4 years. But in just kind of looking at where residents at that point in time said they would be willing to support increased investment. Streets obviously at the top of the list, maintenance and improvement of city parks. So we've kind of checked those boxes. We still have work to do. We're not done there. And I think then really this investment in public safety and city buildings. The 2 mil increase that we did back in for the 2024 budget was about $6, equated to about $6 a month additional for a single family household. That's really, I wanted to put all of this out there. You all have the difficult job of just trying to think about, discuss what number ultimately should be plugged in to this resolution. Remember, and I failed to say this at the outset, that this number is the upper limit. You can come down from here, you cannot go up. So,
And we'll know some things by the time where we could still come down that we don't know
Don't know
today, like, for
today.
example, if the Mill House project is a go.
Correct.
Yeah.
I would anticipate by September, whatever date that meeting, 17th, I think, we'll have even more facts, right?
Yeah, I mean, they really give you very few reasons to go low on this process, other than just purely optics is the only reason out there. I mean, if you think about, if you're scared at all of any kind of threat to our authority to set the mill rate or uncertainty about, what it needs to be and how we're going to figure out what it needs to be in the next few months, your only choice is to put a relatively high number on this resolution and come back later. In that way, it's my annual soapbox. This is a silly exercise, but we're forced to put a high number on this resolution. So that's my opinion.
I would second that.
Yep.
I think that our residents really do enjoy having nice streets. And I know that they have really enjoyed having nice parks. And I know that they have said in the past that they would be willing to spend a few extra dollars a month to do this. So my question is, how detailed data do we have on like who lives here and how much money they make and where they live? I mean, could we increase the mill levy, but then send out like targeted letters to people that we feel might struggle with this so that they are completely aware of the options that they have
Yeah.
for getting rebates?
I mean, you could do properties at like some percentage of your median assessed value or something, right? Can the appraiser's office or anyone give us that data?
You can pull that from. public-
Other than having staff manually pull it address by address, like, is there
Yeah,
a
I
fun
mean,
project
it-
for Ben?
in a way that wouldn't make people crazy, like houses that have been owned by the same family for X a number of years, so that we know that maybe that's an elderly couple or a single elderly person that lives there. I'm not against raising things. I just want to make sure that the least of us are not overburdened.
Sure. Nope.
And I don't mean the least of us in terms of people, but just the people who struggle the most financially.
Well, and unfortunately, as a municipality, we don't have a lot of really good progressive taxation levers, right? We get sales tax, we get special tax, sales tax, we get property tax, and we don't really get to look at income other than going back on programs and reaching out to residents, but
Well, and my other question is, we did an amazing job of updating so many parks and making so many great improvements. I mean, should we take a beat and just use the money that we might have put into parks to pay off some of the debt?
I think so. And I think that's part of what the longer term plan is. And we've really hit the pause button for a variety of reasons. Both on some of the larger projects at the PCC. I think with the exception of some locker room improvements, I think really some of the big pieces that maybe made the facility not feel so welcoming or aesthetically pleasing, or was beginning to show its age in some places, we've done a lot of those. We've made a lot of progress. And I mean, we're down the facilities and maintenance supervisor's position right now. We struggled with Mohawk and I say that with all due respect to Penn, who shouldered all the responsibility of managing Mohawk and Waterworks Parks projects at the same time. That's a lot for one person to manage, plus really overseeing all the projects. So we have slowed down. I think that as we think about, renewal, because I mean, renewal time for both of those dedicated sales taxes will be here before we know it. And so I think we always want to be mindful of, where we had success, and that park sales tax got renewed with 86% voter approval. And so I think, here's what we're going to do. We've done what we promised we would do. And that's why it's been important for us to at least touch every park in some fashion. But I think that's where those conversations this fall. So we have kind of slowed that down. But things are just expensive, And so we can, I think, look at that more over time. I had hoped that because, maybe even for some short-term relief, we could shift some of the operating expenses because we set that sales tax up specifically to also be eligible to pay operating expenses. And we haven't, only one time in its now almost 15-year history have we ever, well, we're using it now for the maintenance, parks maintenance supervisor and staff. But prior to that, we'd only used $100,000 for operating expenses. I was hoping we might be able to shift a little bit of that, at least in the short term, to provide some relief in the general fund. And I don't know that that makes sense, but that's something that we can, talk about as well.
So it might be to put together, if any increases are going to go, a fact sheet of the different things that we get money back on, whether it be SMAC funds, whether it be any kind of funds we get from the county, the state, the federal. And I know those funds are delineating quite a bit, but I still think if people knew where their money's going and how we're trying to preserve the best we can, in also in connection with the funding part, is the benefit they get from us paying trash. Trash service has gone way up individually in other cities. So I think some of those things, it helps them to know this is how we're spending money and why.
Yeah. Okay, so I've heard we should aim high, but I haven't heard a number. Really want to be brave and again, you don't have to make this decision till next week. And if we don't want to plug a number in tonight, we don't have to. We can, I think we have a couple of options. So let's just talk about schedule a little bit. So if you go to the remaining budget steps. So next week, you will have to take action on the resolutions because those are due to the county clerk by the 20th of July. If we wanted to have a 45-minute to 60-minute work session in advance of next week's council meeting, if there's anything else you wanted to talk about, we could do that. We are then continuing discussion at the August committees. We have the community dialogue on the budget scheduled for August 20th, which is our council meeting date in August. So ahead of that, we haven't typically had good attendance at that. But again, that gives us another 6 weeks or so, or a month now maybe, to look at some additional changes. We had talked about, a council budget retreat similar to what we did back in 2023 for the 24 budget. I talked briefly with the mayor about potentially using the August 27th, which is a Wednesday, for a work session with that. If you were interested, you still aren't at the point. You're still then almost a month out from making a final decision on the budget, but you've had the opportunity to at least present some of the options in a community dialogue, or we've been able to communicate some of those pieces. Maybe you get some public feedback and you can come into that setting if that still is something that people are interested in. Then a September committee will make changes, and then we will have the formal official public hearing on the budget at the September 17th meeting.
If I'm reading the chart correctly, a $3.5 million increase covers the entirety of the deficit
What do you think?
I think so.
based on what we know today.
That's right.
I mean, that's the number that I would throw out then. Knowing that it's high and that we may come back from it and that we have other options at our disposal. But if the point is to cover the deficit with a high number, then
I think at this point, you may as well put yourself in a position to have one known option to cover the deficit
Mhm.
and then work back from there.
Yep.
I like it.
Yeah, Laura, I was thinking too, and I know it's short notice for the packet, but I don't know if we could have LGR put anything together based off of kind of this session and predictions for next session on the likely threats to local control around taxation. That might be helpful for the conversation too. And not necessarily, I don't think we necessarily need it for next week, but just during the budget.
Yeah, definitely as we
Discussion.
move into August, and I think
Yeah.
specifically for the community dialogue, it will be important to share. Sorry, I think I'm losing my voice now. Okay. Anything else budget related? Yes.
On the budget, could you address on this sheet?
Uh-huh.
Could you just address under the committed, what is the money toward the ADA compliance? What does that money do? I don't know.
So that is on every municipal court fine or ticket. There is an additional charge, which is a fuel assessment fee that helps offset costs of police vehicles being on the street 24/7. And there is an ADA accessibility fee. And so we collect that and we can only spend that on ADA related improvements or projects. So it's carried in our fund balance, but it's carved out from the 25%. So it's not counting towards that 25% fund balance because the council has said it would take specific council action to spend committed dollars. So the restricted, again, committed and then assigned, and you'll see here, I mean, you see TIF distributions. And those are, if you go back and compare your notes from the work session, those are a little bit higher. We got our TIF abstract after that last work session, and so we've updated those. But excuse me. That's what that is. So I think there's some flexibility there. I think the only thing we've really spent it on to date is phase 1 of an ADA study that we did when we looked at all of the streets and sidewalks around town. We haven't done the public facility. We could do a public facility look, but there's the potential, I think, to tap into that. There may be some things coming out of the Safe Streets for All study that could be related. I've hesitated and we really haven't tried to spend those dollars making major improvements to this facility, but there's a portion of that that could potentially be dedicated to the facility. I mean, it would be a drop in the bucket of that, but that just means you would have to authorize a specific project related to ADA improvements for us to be able to tap into those dollars.
Would that work for sidewalks
Uh-huh.
on Johnson Drive?
Well, if it's an ADA, it depends. If you're making an ADA improvement, yes.
Okay, so we could tap into that to kind of help defray some of the cost.
Are you talking about existing
Well,
or the new project?
New projects, yeah, phase 2 Johnson
Okay.
Drive.
I think again, I think we probably would, it would be my recommendation that we hold on to that and target more site specific that aren't part of a larger construction project, because you're gonna have better economies of scale on that project. I mean, right now, it's looking like, and I don't even want to say it out loud, that we might have some savings. So I did, and I'll probably jinx it. On that project, we're also then, obviously that could impact when you do a percentage sharing of the other STP funds or CARS funds that are coming in. So we're trying to sort through all of that. But, and be very judicious because I don't want to inflate the street program. But again, there could be savings on that project that could help us kind of further or stretch or allow us to make smaller contributions from the general fund to the street program if we can.
Well, so $1 spent on like a one-off ADA project in one site specific area it really is in a sense more expensive than $1 on the Johnson Drive project because of all the people throwing money in the hat. So
Yeah.
if we have ADA money just sitting around frozen, we probably, I think you're saying, hang on to that for when the bill comes due and we're the only one to pay it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have no other questions. I do still need a recommendation on this, I believe.
Regular agenda.
Yep,
Agenda.
I was gonna say it if nobody else did, so that's great. I believe that was the final.
Yes,
Action
that
item.
is the final action item.
We covered, that was part of the budgets. We already did the department updates, so I believe we were good. So it is 9:14 p.m. And if there's no other discussion, that's going to conclude the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee.
It is now 9:14 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting of the Community Development Committee to order.
No, yeah, I'm just
I
laughing.
want you
It's
people to
like-
do this up here. While this meeting is being held in person, we are also offering the option of the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the city council calendar item listed on the front page of missionkansas.org. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting. If you are participating through Zoom, please either add your comment in the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak, and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you are part of our in-person group tonight, please raise your hand but stay seated, and we will call on you to go to the lectern to make your comment. When you make your comment, please state your name and city of residence for the record. Also be conscientious of others trying to speak, and speak slowly and clearly. All public comments are limited to 3 minutes. This meeting will be recorded and posted to the city's website at missionkansas.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions or concerns. Ms. Falks, please call the roll.
Hayden Champosi. Here. Vaughn.
Here.
Loudon. Here. Ryder. Here. Kring. Here. Schmid.
Here.
Josie.
Here.
Carpenter Davis.
Here. Our first item of business tonight is public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment now on an item not on our agenda tonight? Please note, public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we do not have any items coming forward for the Planning Commission or any public presentations this evening. Therefore, we will move into our action items. Our first action item this evening is the acceptance of the meeting minutes from Robin Falks.
Yes, thank you. Draft minutes of the June 4th Community Development Committee meeting are included for review and acceptance in your packet tonight.
I move that we accept.
Consent agenda? Great, thank you. Our second and final action item this evening is for the approval of contract award with GB Construction for the Hodges Localization Stormwater Project from Brent Morton.
Thank you very much. Try to make it quick. I know it's been a long night. So during discussions and development of the stormwater CIP in 2022, staff came up with 2 funding sources for CMP maintenance, sinkholes and stuff like that. So there's 150,000 annually for emergency repairs every year that started getting dedicated in 2023. There's an additional 250,000 for localized localized, we've called it a few things, localized stormwater projects. These projects have a ranking system that we came up with in 2023 because they come from staff and residents. If somebody reports a drainage problem, flooding issues, just smaller projects around town, we were able to compile them in a ranking system and prioritize those by cost and how bad it could be in those situations. So we're able to rank them by cost and the problem in the area, and that's how we kind of run down that list. And then we really reevaluate that list probably every 2 years. It might add a project here and there, but we've really been chipping through them. So we've completed 4 since 2023, since those funds were available. This is the 5th and 6th one that is under design, but Hodges is the one coming forward today. It's kind of a grading, an inlet driveway, and it's just, there's some sheet flow. It's overtaking the curb, but it's too flat over there. There's some water making in the resident's house, cleaning up the right of way from an old road that was there and just addressing a few issues over there. Apollo Gardens is a bigger project with a lot of drainage issues over on that side of town. That's in design. Our goal is to have that out to bid, hopefully if the funds are available, December of this year, just to move it forward into construction season next year. Depending on where it lies, you might be able to package up with the street program or something like that and get a better cost, but it just kind of depends on what that project looks like. So the project bids were open on June 13th, 2025. GP Construction was the lowest qualified bidder. They do a lot of work for us in town, and they're still in town working on 63rd Street right now, so that's helpful with the price. They came in at $32,575. So looking for approval with GB Construction for a localized stormwater project, an amount not to exceed $32,575. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the public or the committee?
I just have a very fast question. Just, they came in so much lower than the rest. Does that mean we are getting quality?
Yes, they've done our street program for like the last 3 years now, and like those are between $2 and $2.5 million projects. A big reason why that cost is so low, they are rebuilding 63rd Street for us. So they're already there with their equipment. So they'll probably leave something over there and just, they're still working on our whole street program. So if they get rained out on a street project, they can just bounce over there on the small project and knock it out and keep their guys busy. So I think that's why there's some cost savings there.
Consent.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that concludes our action items. We do not have any discussion items this evening. Before we adjourn, Ms. Smith, are there any department updates for Community Development Committee?
I think we have exhausted all the news we have to share tonight.
Okay, it is now, let's see, 9:20 PM. With no further discussion, that concludes the meeting of the Community Development Committee.
5 minutes.